like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, members present this evening are myself, Mayor Marl, Council members Gearboss, CO, Rhodes, McClellan, Tahar, and Dillon. From City staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Treasurer Bennett, DPW Director Fordyce, Police Chief Rennick, and Parks and Rec Director Scruggs. For the rest of you who are in the audience this evening, if you'd be so kind to sign in the back to my left, we would appreciate that. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended. We actually have 4 presentations this evening, and the omission of the first is my mistake. We have some of our very valued and appreciated guests from Lindenberg, Germany here who are participating in the GAP program who are going to present first. And then when we get to public hearing 16-90, there are some small revisions to one of the documents that the clerk will reference for your benefit and for the audience's benefit as well. Is that all? And then I also wanted to note you have 2 supplementals at your seat this evening. One is an invite to our small business forum, which will be held this Friday on October 28th. And the second is an email from DPW Director Fordyce dated October the 24th in reference to a tractor purchase. So if there's nothing further at this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Move to approve as amended.
Thank you, Councilwoman Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences, so we will pass by that motion, which leads us to presentations. We have 4 this evening, and the first is that, again, we have some guests from Lindenberg, Germany, and I believe they have a PowerPoint they would like to share with us. Excuse me, I don't think it's a PowerPoint, I think it's a video. You going to assist them with that, Clerk Royal?
I'm going to try.
Okay.
The sound is a little low, so we're going to try and adjust it as we go.
Why don't we do this while Clerk Royal is making some adjustments. If you are a host family, if you are an instructor, or if you are one of our guests from Lindenberg, Germany, if you'd please rise or raise your hand. Very good. We appreciate you being here. Our sister city relationship with Lindenberg, Germany, is very special to us and of equal importance. We hope you're having a delightful and enjoyable time in our community and in the surrounding areas. You want to take the lead on this?
Sure. I just wanted to let the Saline community know that this is the 7th student exchange that we've done with Lindenberg. Lindenberg has been our sister city, and we're really lucky to be able to visit. A lot of the students that are now hosting a German are planning this summer to visit Lindenberg and stay with the same families. It's a beautiful little city nestled in mountains not far from Munich, and it's really something very special that we get to have this relationship. I'm also very thankful to the Sister City Friendship Committee for all of their help with the exchange. Students during the exchange, they stay 21 days. They will be leaving November 2nd, and they've been doing things throughout the community. Last week they read to kindergartners in our Saline area schools. They've been attending school with the high schoolers that they are housing with, part of their guest families. We've also planted bulbs here at City Hall. 2 years ago, we planted at the Miller Pond Park. So I hope that this is a exchange that we will continue every 2 years, just as the German-American Partnership Program has planned for us. So thank you so much to Saline, and thank you for all of your support. Thank you for the families who've been hosting our Germans so wonderfully. It's been amazing, all of the things that they've got planned, and now our football team's doing really well. We're talking about doing a tailgate, just like we're all used to here in the States, but that will be the first tailgate for the Germans. A lot of firsts for this group. First, peanut butter and jelly. So it's been really, really exciting. And that's really what this exchange is about, building bridges, not just being a tourist, but really being able to spend the time in their homes and live somebody else's life for 3 weeks. So thank you so much.
A wonderful city near the Alps and Lake Constance is Lindenberg im Allgäu, which celebrates its 100th anniversary. Why Lindenberg is also called the City of Sun, you can see here. If hometown or to spend vacation, the scope which Lindenberg offers are varied. Lindenberg is a very animated, attractive and manageable city. Famous are the festivals like the Waldsee-Fest, the Hutag with the choice of the Queen of Head of Lindenberg, the International Cheese and Gourmet Festival and the Winter Festival. Apropos winter, here Lindenberg also offers a lot, but see it yourself. At the Waldsee you can enjoy your time. Tradition is very important in Lindenberg. The city has the unique Bavarian Museum of Hats. In the early 70s, straw hats were produced in Lindenberg and sold all around the world. Today you can see the history at the original working places. The best representative for the story of city and hats is the Queen of Hats of Lindenberg, chosen every 2 years. To the big history indicate the in year 2001 dedicated Hutplatz. It is located to the last hat factory of Lindenberg. A well with a sculpture remembers to the tradition. Today, the biggest industry in Lindenberg is Liebherr Aerospace, with about 2,000 employees. The Town Hall of Lindenberg is a building from 1907. The town square in front of it is used for the weekly market and for events like the Stadtfest. Our Maibaum is also located there. Each year, the 1st of May, the Maibaum is putting up, but in Lindenberg we don't do it as traditionally as you can see here. Lindenberg, with his 11,000 inhabitants, has also a big church, the Stadtpfarrkirche St. Peter und Paul, with his twin towers and the huge chapel which was built in 1914. So now it's actually 100 years old. It is also called the Cathedral of the Westallgäu. The Waldsee is the highest located lake of swamp of Germany. Here you can go swimming, go for a walk, do a bike trip, or go fishing.
Thank you, Clerk Royal. I have to say, my friends, that that video was shared at a welcome reception that we had for our guests, I guess it would have been a week ago this past Friday. And I remarked then, and I'll remark now, that is very, very well done and gives all of our citizens just a tiny glimpse of what life is like in Lindenberg, Germany. But we're very pleased that you shared it with us, and again, we are more pleased that you're with us this evening and in our community, and we hope that you enjoy your visit. Why don't we have our guests stand up one more time to be recognized? Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge, because I see Mr. Roth in the background as well as Mrs. Roth and Bruce Westlake. There are many people who are associated with our Friendship Guild who helped to make this possible. And to all the folks in the Saline community who are housing students, without your participation and without your support, this visit would not have been possible. So let's give them a round of applause as well. And to our young people, you're welcome to stay for the rest of our city council meeting. I'm not sure that I would recommend that, because I think the goal is to have an enjoyable, nice time while you're in the Saline area. But you're welcome to do that if that is your wish. But again, thank you so much for being here. We'll let our guests take their leave, and then we'll transition to our next presentation. No, the 150th celebration. Okay. All right. Let me get that. Is that cordless mic working? Disaster night. Okay, we're going to transition now, my friends, to the 150th celebration proclamation. I know that we have my predecessor and current state representative Gretchen Driscoll here. Was there anybody from Senator Warren's office? No? Okay. Gretchen, you want to grab the microphone to your left there? And I'll join you up front. Thank you for being here.
You're going to need to hit the bottom to turn it.
She knows.
That's true.
Hello? Yeah. It's actually a pretty, I didn't expect that little bit of joy that we had with Lindenberg, and it's a great privilege to be here. And so for those of you that haven't been to Lindenberg, do you think you might want to go now? It's a really fantastic community, and I know that it's a really fantastic partnership, and I know the city's working hard on keeping it strong. It's all about community members putting in the effort to host families like this, and to also reciprocate when we have adults. So it's a really great opportunity to share some great culture. So it's brought back a lot of memories. So I'm going to come over here a little bit, because and then actually, yeah, this would be great. And so I just wanted to. I know that the city is celebrating a really big event this year, and I think it was a really fantastic effort, all the work that was done by the committee, the sesquicentennial, is that right? That's correct. It took me a while. Lindenberg just had their 1,150th birthday, and that is, I'm trying to remember, I tried to learn in German, but a Geburtstag is birthday, and so that was also a really fun celebration. And so really this state wanted to recognize, this is an older city in the state of Michigan, and it is something that is of great importance that we recognize and do the work for our citizens to really support that. And I know here in Saline that there's been a lot of recognition of our heritage. When I first moved to Saline, we had the railroad depot. Now we have the Rentschler Farm and the Bixby Marionettes. And I was talking with Jim earlier, we have the Salt Springs Park. So our heritage is a really important part of our community. And I just wanted to commend you, Mayor, and all the City Council and the staff for putting together some great events this month. And so we wanted to do a proclamation from the state and your governor, Rick Schneider, and your Senator, Rebecca Warren, acknowledging the effort to really take some time to think about the fact that we have been around here for 150 years. That's a big deal. It's a big deal in Michigan, so you should all be very proud. So I have a proclamation, I'm going to read it. Let it be known that it is a special honor and distinct privilege to acknowledge and join with the City of Saline to celebrate its sesquicentennial. We recognize the important role Saline has played for the many families who have lived and thrived here for more than a century and a half, and are grateful for all it has to offer, including a vibrant downtown, abundant cultural offerings, and safe neighborhoods, as we commemorate this important anniversary. Centuries ago, the area that is now Saline was a destination for Native Americans who came to harvest salt from the natural salt springs to take back to their villages. When French voyagers discovered the salt springs, they named the local river Saline, from which the French word for salt, leaving a lasting mark. Drawn to the natural salt mines and prime location on the Detroit-Chicago Railway, settlers flocked to Saline in the early 19th century. And generations later, in 2013, Saline's unique natural resources were further protected and recognized by the creation of Saline's 12th park, Salt Springs Park, thanks to the support of the City Council and many hardworking volunteers. Sorry? Yeah, the village of Saline was officially established in 1832 by Orange Risden, a surveyor and leader in the area. Since then, Saline has grown and prospered with the expansion of agriculture, industry, and its role in railroad transport. In 1931, Saline became a city, and since then has kept flourishing thanks to its successful partnerships with the business community and the citizens. As the city of Saline continues to grow and prosper, it remains a desirable location to live, work, and play. Residents continue to foster sister city relationships with Lindenberg and Monglai, Germany, and Brecon, Wales, connections that are celebrated annually in the popular Saline Oktoberfest and Celtic Festival. The Saline Rec Center, which celebrated its 25th anniversary this year, continues to serve as a hub for healthy living and community engagement and activity. And the Saline area schools are continually recognized as being among the top in the state. In special tribute, therefore, this document is signed and dedicated to commemorate Saline's 150th anniversary. In doing so, we recognize its rich history and the many contributions the residents of Saline have made to the community over the years. With the continued support of the Saline residents, we look forward to a successful future for the city. May Saline continue to prosper, and may Saline residents be assured of our best wishes for them and our community in the generations to come. In the words of Saline's founder, Orange Risden, in an 1840 address, may she continue to shine in light, knowledge, and liberty with the same increasing brilliance that she has shown from infancy to the present time. So congratulations, Mayor Morrow.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, firstly, Representative Driscoll, we appreciate you being here. We know you have a very busy schedule. And I think it's fitting and extremely appropriate that you were here to present this tribute because you know firsthand how exceptional this community is, and you spent a significant portion of your adult life helping to make it what it is today. So we thank you for your ongoing, it is a partnership, but we appreciate your ongoing contributions and your leadership throughout the years. Let's give Representative Driscoll a round of applause. It is true, my friends. We've had some marvelous events. A firework display a week ago Saturday that was very warmly received. A home tour the following day. In fact, Representative Driscoll's home was on that tour. A tour that celebrated our cemetery's rich history, and we still have a very comprehensive and complete book chronicling the chapters of our community's history for sale at the front counter for a very reasonable price of $20 per copy. So if you haven't picked one up yet, I encourage you to do so. It is true, this is a very special place. We all know that. If we didn't think it was as special as it is, we would have left a long time ago. It's a great place to raise a family, it's a great place to start a business, and it's a great place to live. And we're very proud, all of us I think are very proud to call Saline home. We appreciate the support, this recognition, and I truly believe as I close every one of my State of the City addresses with this line, I really believe that this community's best days are yet to come. So again, 150 years is a significant milestone. I think 150's never looked as good, and again, we appreciate the recognition, and here's to 150 more. Thank you so much. Okay, moving right along, we have some Green Thumb Awards to give out. We have the chair of our Parks Commission, and Director Scruggs, do you want to join us up front as well? You want to leave it to Jody Roberts? Okay, we have the staff, or recording secretary Jody Roberts with us as well. Can I turn this over to you, my friend?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Oh, Heidi, yeah, our Parks Commission Council Liaison, please. Do you have a PowerPoint as well?
I did, but it's not cooperating, and that's fine.
All right.
So this evening, we're here to recognize 3 properties from the city that we chose as sort of the ambassadors to beautify the city more. This year in the Green Thumb process, we had 20 properties total recognized by their peers, 16 residential and 4 non-residential, if you will. And tonight we're here to celebrate those 3 winners. When I call your name, please come forward. First in the residential, we have Paula and Barry England of Henry Street.
Congratulations. Yeah, please. Congratulations. Thank you.
Our second residential property we'd like to recognize are Michael and Thomas Firstenow.
Congratulations. Got some more goodies for you.
Yes, all of our winners this evening are receiving a certificate and a commemorative trowel and gift card to Saline Flowerland. Next, I'd like to bring about a larger group representing Rentschler Farm. And those individuals will include Evelyn Burns, Taylor Jacobson, and last but certainly not least, John and Kathy Bauman. Of special note with Rentschler Farm, their garden is a blend of flowers and vegetables and is tended by volunteers recognized here, John and Kathy Bowman, Evelyn Burns, and Taylor Jacobson. And a special note, of all the food that they produce, it all goes to food gatherers. Last year, donating 4,000 pounds of produce to help those in our community. And we want to give you guys a special thank you for that.
one more.
Oh. Well, let me just say very briefly, we appreciate the Park Commission's continued leadership on this, and to all of our award recipients, hopefully you will inspire and motivate others, but what you do to beautify the community and enhance and improve the aesthetic is noted and very much appreciated. So let's give them all one more round of applause. And thank you again for being with us this evening. Thank you. Jody, thank you.
Did you want to grab the proclamation?
Say what about?
Was that Gretchen's proclamation?
I'll take it.
I can.
Yeah, why don't you do that? I'll say something first, Mickey Jo. And they're going to use the PowerPoint, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Josh, you can go ahead.
So last up as a presentation, we have the Plant Moran Annual Audit, and Treasurer Bennett, who worked tirelessly on this issue along with our auditors from Plant Moran, is going to introduce our guests, and then they have a PowerPoint as well as a supplemental that was distributed earlier this evening. They'll make their presentation and then address any questions, concerns that council members have. Mickey Jo, I'll turn it over to you, and gentlemen, welcome.
The actual handout that you have is the PowerPoint. I thought we might want to do it on the display too for those viewers who will be watching later. It is my pleasure to introduce Plant Moran staff. We had a little bit of a change this year. I was a little hesitant, but it went very smooth. So we're all familiar with Martin. And then this year we have a new lead, Josh, and then Alan Adair. They have been excellent to work with, and I think it's only appropriate that after all this celebration, we present the audit.
Let the fun begin, right? So hard to follow those presentations. Thank you for having us once again this year. As Mickey Jo said, my name is Martin Olenek from Plant Moran, and with me is Josh and Ellen. They did all the hard work, so I'm not going to take all the credit from them by any means. We're going to cover 3 items today. The financial statements very briefly. Josh is going to go through the graphs just to kind of put a little bit more light to the numbers that are in the financial statements. And then lastly, I was going to cover the management letter, just to kind of provide to you a summary of the audit, any suggestions we may have, and kind of just a summary of things that are going on around the state as well. So first of all, the financial statements, which is the thickest document that you will have, it's probably 70 or 80 pages long. The one item that I did want to mention is page 1 of the financial statements is the opinion letter itself. So that's the only document that really belongs to Plant Moran. Everything else is the city's numbers, footnote disclosures, etc. I did want to point out that once again, it is an unmodified opinion. Therefore, what it means is that you can rely on the numbers that are in the financial statements. We tested them. I went through it for a few weeks and were a complete pain for the staff, I'm sure. But after everything's said and done, you have an unmodified opinion, which is exactly what you should expect every year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to go through some of the numbers, and then I'll cover the management letter afterwards. If you have any questions during the presentation, or if you want to hold off until after, whichever way you'd like, we can definitely accompany either method. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to start with page 1 on these slides, which shows the general fund revenue by proportion. These proportions on this pie chart are very similar to prior year, and once again, the residential property taxes and non-residential property taxes make up most of that, totaling 69% for the year. The next slide shows, again, the general fund revenue, but this breaks it out by amount over the last 5 years. Again, property taxes make up most of this. They are up slightly, 2% over the prior year, and total revenue is up about 4% to $8,273,000 for this year. The next slide is the other side, general fund expenditures. And again, these proportions are very similar to what they were in the prior year. And the top numbers here are general government making up 41% of the expenditures, and public safety making up 32%. The next slide shows the general fund expenditures, again by number and for the last 5 years. The total expenditures are up about 6% to $7,475,000 in the current year. Most of this is made up of some capital outlay expenditures, which are split among several of these categories. The next slide shows the general fund balances over the last 12 years. And this, if you can see, 2016 is up to $2,401,000 in the current year, which makes up about 32% of current year expenditures. This is split between undesignated and designated fund balance, which is an old term from 2010 and before, but we're keeping it to show consistency. You can see on the very bottom, it does break out the splits this year. Restricted, 19,198, committed of 4,870, assigned of 634,873, and unassigned of 1,741,702. The next slide shows capital expenditures by type. You can see that there's a significant increase this year to $5,491,000. And again, it's broken out between three categories. Most of this is due to the rec complex and the motor pool, wastewater treatment plant, and then various street and sidewalk projects. The next slide shows full accrual, or the total governmental activity revenue. Again, this spread is fairly similar to what it was last year. And again, property taxes make up most of this, 54% between non-residential and residential. The next slide shows the full accrual governmental activities expenses. And again, very similar to prior year, general government makes up about 24%, public safety 25%, for a total of 49% of total expenses. The next slide shows what property taxes are composed of for residents. This is very similar to last year. There's only a difference of .022 mils, and that's on the Washtenaw County number, the top right there, of 1.7565. Other than that, the numbers are very close to last year. And then the next slide shows overall City of Saline's millage for the last 20 years. And you can see that it's been fairly constant recently, and you can see it's 16.28 at the bottom there, which the next slide shows is fairly close to some of your neighbors here. City of Saline is the fourth one down on this chart. It's the blue line on here, and that's just underneath Ann Arbor, excuse me, just underneath Milan and Ann Arbor. The next slide shows taxable values as equalized. All these numbers are fairly similar year over year, with the one exception of personal property for 2017, which is decreasing as a result of the personal property tax reform. The next slide shows taxable value versus state equalized value, and that also then shows the foregone revenue over the last 11 years totaling $6,052,000. The next slide then shows the state revenue sharing, actual versus projected, blue being the actual revenue over the last 18 years, and then the shortfall as if revenue had maintained itself since 2001 as they had originally projected. The shortfall this year is for 2017 is $242,000 as projected. The next slide shows the recreational complex fund before general fund contribution and debt service there at the bottom. Revenues are up about 1% to $1,414,000. Expenditures are up about 21% to $1,706,000. Most of this is due to some one-time capital expenditures for the natatorium ventilation and the repair and resurface project for this year. The next slide shows the water fund. The water fund has an increase of operating revenue of about 18% to $2,191,000 and a decrease in operating expenses of about 7%, leading to an operating income of about $847,000. On the other side, for sewer, the next slide, there are decreases in both operating revenue and operating expenses of about 8% and 6% respectively, to $1,886,000 and $2,057,000, yielding an operating loss of $171,000 for the year. Slide number 18 shows the pension information. This is separated into three columns. The first shows the pension liabilities for the year. You can see the various categories there, employees terminated and retirees, for a total pension liability of $25,924,000, which is an increase of about $2,751,000 over last year. Plan net position, the next column, is down $474,000 to $15,374,000 for the current year. And then covered payroll is very similar to last year, a decrease of $46,000 to $3,163,000.
So if I can interject here too, which I was going to cover during the management letter, but it's, I think, kind of goes in well with this slide. So this year, your overall funded status is about 60%, just under that. Last year was about 68%, so clearly a significant decrease. A lot of it is to do with changing assumptions. MERS, for example, has been changing some of the assumptions. So the return on assets historically has been averaging or assumed to be averaging about 8%. That's decreased to about 7.75%. So just that quarter change increased the liability by about $1.3 million over the life of the assets. So it's not really that all of a sudden you have a lot more liability or something to that extent, or a significant reduction in assets per se, and therefore you're only 60% funded. From the 68 to 60% is the change in assumptions. So over time, you're still funding the plan as you're projected, as MERS is letting you know how much you should be funding every year, and in time, that gap should decrease and you'll be able to fulfill all your liabilities. Now, the line that's on the graph too that I wanted to point out, so the current retirees and terminated or employees that are no longer with the city, you do have enough assets to pay those liabilities. It's just now you're funding essentially those or you need to put assets in for the current employees that are currently employed within the city. So you are meeting your obligations. It's just, it's a long time that's going to come into plan, and over time you'll be able to make up those assets.
Finally, the last slide here simply shows revenue and receipts, including transfers, for all the various categories here. The total of $17,744,000 represents about a 4% increase over the prior year. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity to serve as your auditors.
So for the last document, it's a 12-page letter that you have in front of you. I will not go page by page through this document. I did want to point out a few things in here in summary form. So it's broken up in 3 sections. The first section, basically it's in response to the letter that you would have received before the audit, and to describe how the audit went. If we had any significant issues, disagreements with management, if there's any problems during the audit. I do want to inform you that we didn't have any issues, that from our perspective, the audit went very well, and there's nothing to report of any significance. So you should be very happy from that regard. Section 2 are any general recommendations that we have as a result of the audit, and that's shown on page 6. So a few items. One is, as I always say, the picky auditors that we are, have a couple items. Fiscal security and prevention of data loss. So there's a couple things that we have recommendations in regards to your IT department, just to make sure you secure your data a little bit more. So that's shown in here. The main item that I wanted to highlight is the unassigned general fund balance. So Josh mentioned that your fund balance has increased over last year, which is always a good thing. So we commend the city on doing that. And the one thing is, so you do have currently a fund balance policy that you're supposed to have about 15 to 20% undesignated fund balance, 15 or to 20% of your expenditures for next year. So you are over that. You're about 23%, which again looks really good. The one comment I would have is I would recommend the city just to take a look at it, kind of going back to my discussion about the pension plan and just making sure that you're funding that plan, perhaps designating or restricting a portion of that fund balance towards that liability, so that way you have that for the future liabilities that are coming due. So that would be the main item on that. And then section 3 are legislative and informational items. So a couple things that I wanted to point out. So one is the financial outlook. Again, I know we've been through the downturn historically and just in the recent past. I think the city's done a really good job in trying to manage its expenses, especially in light of significant revenues that are supporting all the communities in Michigan. Property taxes and state shared revenues both have been significantly depressed over the last few years. They're rebounding, but they're rebounding a lot slower than expenses are. Unfortunately, expenses are going at inflationary rates, and revenues, unfortunately, are not keeping up. The legacy costs, we did talk about that on the pension side. And then on the bottom of page 7, we have a new pronouncement that's going to be coming into play in a couple years. So last year we had GASB 68, which essentially put your pension liability on the face of the financial statements on the full accrual statements. In 2 years, GASB 75 is going to do the same thing to your OPEB, your other post-employment benefits. So what is that going to look like on your statements? If you look on page 8, we have kind of like a so-called pro forma statement. So currently, if you look at the city as a whole, including water, sewer, general fund, all the funds, you have a total of net position of about $40 million. Majority of it is invested in capital assets, and then you have an unrestricted actually deficit of about $3.2 million, which is due to the pension liability that is recorded. Now, in 2 years, you're going to be forced into recording the post-employment benefits as well. And in the right column, we have pro forma the numbers, what it's going to look like at that point. So instead of the $3.2 million deficit, you're going to be at about $11 million deficit. So the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits liability, is about $8 million at the present time. So again, kind of going back to the general fund and the fund balance, I think you're doing great currently, but I think just kind of taking a look, long-term plan, and making sure that you designate appropriate amounts from your fund balance so that way you can keep up with some of those liabilities. Those liabilities are not due next year by any means. It's going to be over a long period of time, and the city is doing the right things and setting the money aside so far. Some of the other items here, revenue sharing. Some of the projections initially from the state were a little bit higher than they are now, so I would just kind of encourage the city to make sure that you keep an eye on it. Revenue sharing is dependent on the receipts and sales tax, et cetera, and then sales tax has not been as high for the state as originally projected. And then a couple of the other items that I wanted to specifically identify or point out. On page 10, new rules governing management of federal programs. So this year, the city was not subject to a single audit or federal programs audit. You were under that threshold. The threshold has been increased this past year to $750,000. In the past was $500,000. That means if the city has had expenditures of over $750,000 in the current year, you would be subject to that single audit. You did not have that, but if you do have expenditures in excess of $750,000 in the future, you will be subject to that single audit as well.
That's $750,000 on federal funds.
Federal funds, correct. But it's in total for the city, so it's not based on each program. And then another item that I want to point out, for any community that receives Act 51 money, which every city does, starting with this coming year, you will be subject to a performance audit. The state has not come out with specific rules what that performance audit is going to require. But as more information comes out, we'll definitely communicate with the city and inform the city of what needs to be done. We will be able to perform those performance audits, but how detailed or how much is going to consume from that perspective, we're not 100% certain yet. So those are the main items that we wanted to cover. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. I do want to thank you again for the opportunity of working with the city. We appreciate the opportunity again, and if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Martin, we appreciate your work on this, and we appreciate the work of your team as well. You've always done an exceptional job, and we appreciate that. The audit is a big issue, so we'll open it up for questions. Let's start at the far end of the dais. Ms. McClellan, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Mr. Gearbaugh?
No, just some items. What I would like to do is notes 9 and 10 at some point be discussed in a work session a little more in detail. I think there's a lot of information there that we need to understand, especially in terms of what our potential liability is going to be for OPEB and so forth. The other concern that I have, and it's been the issue about note 2 that shows in our financial reports regarding construction code fees and the deficit in which the city has subsidized construction fees and so forth by the tune of $1.4 million over the last 15 years. And again, this current year's shortfall is $45,000, which clearly indicates that we need to look at how we can address this. And I think that's one of the items that our city manager has mentioned due to the potential changes that are occurring in our shop. So if we look at what's going to happen with that, I'm hoping that that'll help address that deficit.
Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, any questions?
No, I had some of the same notes that Councilmember Gerbach had, and that had to do with Note 10 and the OPEB, and I think that's worthwhile, work session.
Okay, very good. Ms. Tahar?
Nothing in addition.
Okay. Ms. Dillon? Mr. Seal?
Nothing further.
Very good. Martin?
If I could make one comment, so in the
Absolutely.
study session, we'd be more than happy to attend a study session if you'd like us to. And then on note 2, so I think a lot of communities are definitely concerned about the deficit over time. The note came into existence in the year 2000 to make sure that communities were not quote unquote making money off of building code fees. So the biggest concern from an outsider's perspective is to make sure that if you are making a profit, that you're designating that profit and not just kind of using it for regular purposes. So that's what the purpose of the note, but I do understand that you'd want to keep that deficit to a minimum.
Yeah.
It's very similar to other communities, but again, I completely understand your concerns.
Yeah, definitely after the recession and so forth, we were extremely supporting that with a lot of funds. So that's $1.5 million or $4 million that we couldn't use for other purposes, so thank you.
Martin, we'll have staff get with you, and maybe we can actually do a combined work meeting, because earlier this evening, council committed to discussing in the form of a work session some of the issues relating to retiree health insurance. So maybe we could lump the two together, but I'll have either between Treasurer Bennett and City Manager Campbell, we'll get you some dates and maybe propose them at the next council meeting and see what works.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Thank you. This one's not yours, right?
Lift up the screen. I'm just going to keep going. I don't want to grab the cover. Okay, that concludes the presentation portion of the agenda. We proceed now to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. And please note that there will be opportunity for public comment on items 16-189 and 16-190. Mrs. Hess, please.
Yes, it's kind of sad, the audit. We used to, when I was on council, we spent a whole meeting on the audit. I think the pinwheel ought to be shown to the public of how much is coming from industry and how much is coming from residential. We're definitely, as far as residential's, packing a lot. It's sad to say that our liability is going from 3.2 million to 11 million in the future. That's sad. To say our pension fund is 250, well, you fill in 25 million, I guess what it is. But, and yet we have personal property tax was taken off for the people to pay, that filled that gap. And then state revenue sharing, of course, we don't have that, so the people get to fill that gap. And now tonight, you have a whole bunch of tax breaks. And guess who gets to pick up that gap? The people again. I'm on Social Security. I think I'm going to get $4, whatever increase a month for, it just definitely, this giveaway program, and you say we can talk later, but this is sad.
Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items?
Hello, I'm Mary Ellen Mulcrone, Director at Saline District Library, and I want to thank you for the proclamation regarding National Friends of Libraries Week. It's a nice opportunity for us to recognize our Friends of Saline District Library, which is a very dedicated group of hardworking volunteers. They do a lot to support the library, and most notably, they run the Corner Bookshop, which is open every 7 days a week, and the associated monthly book bag sales, bags of books. And they support the library. They use these funds to support the library in many different ways, such as furniture, equipment, programs, especially our summer reading program. And They support us in other ways. They do physical work, not only to run the book sales. They help us with other programs. As an example, this week they'll be helping with some trick-or-treating in the library, and next week doing the same at the Boo Bash, and they help with lots of other programs. So I just want to be sure that they know they are thanked and recognized, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. We appreciate your comments. Are there additional citizen comments? John, please.
John Olson, Saline Area Chamber of Commerce. I've come up here, I guess, quite a few times over the past few months, speaking in favor of different business aspects that we have coming before Chamber or Council. You know, we had the theater, we had the car wash, we have Ace Hardware, Liebherr, a new hotel. I mean, these are all great things. You know, we're taking long dormant and in some cases unused properties and making them useful again. You know, you were speaking about the book earlier, and as part of that, I'm kind of a history nut, and it got me digging into taking a deep dive into the chamber history and some of the business history in Saline. And, you know, in the 40s and the 50s, they were realizing that we could not have the services we want. We could not have the business or the schools that we want. There's so many things we couldn't have if we didn't start attracting business and get some industrial parks going and you know, bring in these dollars, because, you know, residential, like it or not, costs a lot more than a business. So we've got one coming tonight who is expanding. We've got another one who's coming to town. I think these are, again, very positive things. I see this as an investment by the community. We're not writing them checks. They're still going to be paying taxes. You know, I think it's a very positive thing. This is a long-term revenue stream. And, you know, all these things that I talked about are all going to be a benefit to the community in general. I would just urge you to look positively on getting this rehabilitation district up and running and allow Imagine Theater to be able to make use of that. I think that could be very good for the entire complex over there. It's been suffering, and it would be good to give it a little inoculation to get it filled up and get it going again. And also for MMI, you know, a long-standing business in town, they're expanding. I mean, you know, they could go someplace else, they could look somewhere else, but they're staying in Saline. Liebherr's staying in Saline. American Soy's staying in Saline. Everybody's trying to expand here, and I think we just need to encourage them and make it as positive for them as possible. So I would encourage you to take positive action tonight for all these businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there additional citizen comments?
Good evening. I'm Roy Townsend, Managing Director of Washington County Road Commission. First, I'd like to thank the City Council. A couple years ago, the County Board of Commissioners put on $500,000 for road improvements. Last year, we were able to do the project out in front here at Harris, North Harris Street. County money went into that. This year, we were able to do Maple Farm subdivision. And what they're doing now is they're offering a 4-year $500,000 voted on by the people millage will go towards roads. That $500,000 costs the average property owner about $35 a year. It'll generate about $7.2 million countywide. 20% will go this time to non-motorized. That's going to be administered by the County Parks Administration. They're going to work on Border to Border, which is a trail that goes along the Huron River from Livingston County to Wayne County, going through connecting a lot of the cities. Also, they're going to have what they call the Connecting Communities, which will be grants available to the cities and townships. That's what Pittsfield Township used to connect a lot of their trails to the city of Saline, and then they're planning to connect it to the city of Ann Arbor. They'll allow, like I said, communities to connect with non-motorized trails. That's going to be about $600,000 a year. The projects also with work from Todd and Gary Rubel, gave me projects, shows. So basically, we put together what the 4-year plan would be, so the citizens know if this money is raised, where it's going to go. Every township has a project. All the cities and villages all have projects. Some of the highlights around here, Saline Mylan Road, pretty rough road coming out of town that actually will be improved over the next 4 years. Willis Road will actually be all improved from the city of Saline all the way out to Rawsonville Road. Austin Road, same thing. Parts of Austin was done last year and this year with money from this millage. I think we all realize road funding in the state were the last as far as money spent per capita on road improvements. The legislature did do something, but what they did is they phased it in over 5 years. So if we want to wait to 2021, we'll finally get money for roads. And only half of that money is actually guaranteed for roads. The other half, what they've done is the legislature, sort of a shell game. They said future legislators are going to have to take $600 million out of the general fund. Didn't say where that money is going to come from. So why do we think there's going to be excess money for schools, excess money for other legislative needs? So in reality, they've only identified half the money for roads. This way, money raised locally stays locally. And we all know if you send money to Lansing or send money to Washington, D.C., you're not going to get a dollar back. This way, the money stays locally. And with local money, there's a lot more flexibility. When you have federal programs or state programs, there's limitations on those, how you do a road improvement. They want to follow their rules. This is a lot more flexible, and it's over 4 years. So like I said, just appreciate your support. So I just wanted to give you that information. I have some handouts that I'll leave out front for people to look at. And one other thing, we have this WCRC Fix It. City of Ann Arbor has this, and I know you guys have gone to it, where you can go online and get the app. And the good thing is, by all the communities doing that, when you do that, if you have the app, you'll be able to, wherever you are, we'll send it. If it's in the township, we'll send it to the road commission. If it's in the city of Saline, city of Ann Arbor, so it's really a great thing. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks, Roy. Additional comments on agenda items? No, then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Mayor, I'd like to remove 16-188.
Can I say something to that before?
Quickly, yeah.
The reason that needs to go on consent agenda is because the fees have to be adopted before the public hearing.
That's fine, but I'd like to discuss this before that occurs.
Okay.
And actually, that's okay, because it would be the first item. It would precede public hearing item 16-189. Okay, so C-16-188 will be the first item we consider after we approve the consent agenda. So how about a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on now to a motion to approve and adopt the suggested fees for the commercial rehabilitation exemption. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt, approve and adopt.
Moved by CO to approve and adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Tahar. Mr. Gearbaugh, did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, my concern with this is we're setting this fee right now, but depending on how we actually end up moving forward with these commercial rehabilitation exemptions, we know that this could potentially become open door for a lot of other operations or potential developments. I don't know how we will set that in the future. My concern is that there may not be $5 or $6 million projects, but potentially $20,000 or $30,000 projects, which could happen in the downtown area. How will we address that in the future? Because we're just using the IFT, and I'm concerned using that as a, I guess, a setting stone.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, my suggestion is similar to what was in special projects, is that presuming that we would also, for the commercial rehabilitation abatement, that we would have a scoring system like similar, it's in some way, shape, or form similar to the IFTs. And so while when we mentioned about bringing that to a special projects to some proposed information and to discuss that, make any potential changes, make a recommendation. But I would suggest we, at the same time, we look into the criteria for establishing the fees and stuff in greater detail as well.
Is the preparation time for this commercial rehabilitation similar to what we use for an IFT? Because I know it's usually based upon the amount of staff time.
I believe it's similar. I mean, once obviously you establish a district, And for the most part, our, for the IFTs, for the industrial tax abatements, all of the districts are established. But you may recall a few years ago for the Sun Engineering Building, right? That was not within an industrial development district, which needed to be so they could apply for 198. And so there was some additional time to establish that, but once it's established,
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're covering for this situation, that we've covered our
Sure.
costs for this potential unique situation, and that staff time is not being subsidized by the city.
oh, absolutely, no, I would concur. We want to make sure that we cover all our costs.
Additional comments or questions? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Tahar to approve and adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the first of two public hearings. This is item 16-189. This is MMI Engineered Solutions IFT application. The first motion will be a motion to open the public hearing at 8:40 p.m.
Move to open?
Moved by Gearba, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. I'll get you on the next one, Ms. Tahar. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open, affording any member of the public an opportunity to speak specifically to this item. Are there any citizens from the public? Are there any comments from the public, excuse me?
Mary Hess, could you tell me if they presently have a tax abatement?
I'll let Ms. Bennett address some of those questions at the conclusion of the public comment period.
Thanks. I didn't think it was a hard question, but that's okay. I noticed that when we used to give tax abatements years ago, it was for jobs that would be provided in the area. And this says to save existing jobs and creating 47 new jobs. And I was wondering if they presently have a tax abatement which would have covered the 88 existing jobs. And that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Are there additional public comments? Then the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing at 8:42 p.m.
Move to close.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Tahar. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the public hearing is now closed. Before we proceed to the motion to approve and adopt, I know we have one of the petitioners here, Mr. Paul Larson. Paul, we appreciate your attendance this evening, as well as our city treasurer, business ambassador, Ms. Bennett. Would either one of you care to make a comment at this time? We would welcome that. You want to begin, Ms. Bennett? And Paul, maybe you can give a brief synopsis about what's being proposed and the really great and positive trajectory that MMI Engineered Solutions is on currently.
So yes, I would like to just respond to the public comments. The MMTI has, or MMI, sorry, has 3 current IFTs, 2 of which, well, one of which will expire at the end of next year, the following year. So all of them are coming due 17, 18, and 19. So this is a long-term company that's put dollars into this community and continues to do so. The Special Projects Commission did go through and score them on the IFT evaluation guidelines to award them a 5-year tax abatement. And I would turn it over for you to explain your investment into our community.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
Mayor, City Council, citizens of Saline, my name is Paul Larson. I'm the CFO for MMI Engineered Solutions. We've been very fortunate to work with the city and with people in the area, the MEDC and the Ann Arbor Spark, in putting together this program. Over the next 3 years, we will spend close to $5.6 million of investment in the area. So far, in fiscal year 2016 through the October timeframe, we have expensed $2.8 million in investment into the building and infrastructure necessary to make this function. We have also added additional 9 jobs since we started this process out, which is adding $380,000 in revenue, in tax money, I should say, in payroll for this area. Our goal is to have 47 jobs, about $2 million annually in salaries that would be paid out locally. Total investment, again, about $5.6 million over a 3-year time frame. So thank you very much for this time. And they would do it.
Sorry about that, Paul. Are there any questions for the city treasurer or for our petitioner? No questions? Okay. I was just speaking to the city treasurer. I would note that on this next motion, as well as the final motion on item 1691, there are some blanks that we will need to fill in. Ms. Bennett, do you want to speak very briefly on what the recommendation was from Special Projects Commission, which met, I believe, a week ago today?
Yes, so I'm just trying to get back to my notes, I'm sorry. The amount of the investment is a total, and I'm trying to find the breakout, of $3 million of real property only for a period of 5 years.
We don't need that language about personal property.
No.
0 for both.
0 for 0 years. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Paul, we appreciate your comments. Again, appreciate you being here. We'll proceed now to the final motion. The chair would entertain a motion to approve and adopt or not to approve the resolution approving application of MMI Engineered Solutions for an industrial facility certificate in the amount of $3 million for real property for a 5-year period and 0 for personal property for a 0-year period, subject to the terms and provisions of the tax abatement agreement to be entered into by the applicant with the city of Saline, and to authorize or not authorize the mayor and clerk to execute said tax abatement agreement as presented.
Move to approve and adopt and to authorize.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearboss. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McClellan. Discussion. Mr. Gearboss.
This is kind of consistent with everything else that we've done, and this kind of investment is an improvement within our community that I think does meet the criteria that we've always wanted with our industrial, is that investing in keeping jobs, but also investing a significant dollar into our, I would say, real property, and that the return on it, we're at least receiving 50% of the taxable value, which in certain cases, we wouldn't be receiving anything at all. So I think this is a great opportunity for us and a long-term company that's been in our town, and we need to recognize that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Seal.
I just want to say at a time and date when so many businesses, it seems, are moving offshore, especially for manufacturing jobs, it's very heartening to see a local business stay local. Thank you.
Additional comments? Well, I would just add, and this has been noted on several occasions in the past, but Mr. Larson and his associates, as well as those of us at the City of Saline, fought pretty hard for this investment to be made in our community when the company was considering a number of alternative sites. I'm very glad that the choice was made to invest and expand in the facility. This expansion nearly doubles the size of the existing facility, grows the tax base, offers employment opportunities to our citizens, and overall, as Mr. Gearbaugh noted, is a marvelous addition to our community. So we wish MMI Engineered Solutions and all of our friends that work there many years of success and prosperity. We know that you're a great community partner, and again, we're very pleased and we're very grateful for the continued investment and belief in our community. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, it's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by McClellan, to approve and adopt and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Paul, thank you again. We move on to public hearing 16-190. This is the creation of a commercial rehabilitation district. The first motion will be a motion to open the public hearing, affording anyone from the public an opportunity to speak at 8:47 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Seal. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Public hearing is now open, affording anyone from the public an opportunity to speak specifically to this issue.
Move to close the public.
It's been moved by Gearbaugh to close the public hearing at, we'll say, 8:48 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Public comment period is concluded. We now move to the third motion, which is a motion to approve and adopt or not to approve the resolution to establish a commercial rehabilitation district for the property commonly known as Saline Commons in the city of Saline, and to authorize or not authorize the mayor and clerk to execute said commercial rehabilitation district as presented.
Move to approve and adopt and to authorize.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Seal. Ms. Bennett, you can make any comment this evening?
Well, I would like to follow up and just give a real brief explanation. This commercial rehabilitation district, as submitted, was for approximately 16 acres, formerly known as the Saline, well, most people probably know as the Country Market Shopping Center. This district will cover that entire center, excluding the bank and excluding the Ruby Tuesdays restaurant. What that does is allow any of the businesses within that district that is going to invest in rehabilitation of the building, that it allows them to submit an application, which is a totally separate process. The district, as you may recall, needs to be approved and by not only this council, but also by the Washtenaw County. It was taken to special projects, and special projects did approve the district. There was a question. The law does state that the district must be a minimum of 3 acres unless it is in a downtown or a business district, and we were asked to define the business district. And a business district can be anything that the council, the governing body, deems they can define it. So we have went ahead through the county. As you may aware, we also have an application for the exemption by the Imagine Theaters. It's also on our agenda this evening. And because we want to, Imagine Theaters needs to get this approved. We did take this to the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, and the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners did approve the full 16 acres with no, unanimously. So I wanted to respond to that, and if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them now. In reference to this is just establishing the district.
Correct, just establishing the district. Are there questions for City Treasurer Bennett? Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes.
Just, could you explain why the bank and Ruby Tuesdays locations were excluded?
Because they're separate parcels. So at the point when we did this, they're separate parcels. They have separate tax ID numbers. We were in the process of redeveloping and using like a condo breakout of the shopping center itself. And at that point, it was just easier because we had to have 3 acres. You could do the shopping, you could do the portion that would be Imagine, and then the commons, so all the parking would be the commons. So we just decided to do the existing parcel as it was as of the December 31st tax roll.
And then that question was for the benefit of those who haven't been involved in the process.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Mr. Gearbaugh.
And my question was the one about the business district, because my concern is that if we do the full 16 acres, but if we could just do the Imagine, then we would basically just signify the one building in which it exists, because potentially that would mean everyone within that district could ask for a tax abatement for up to 10 years, or a tax exemption, I mean, for up to 10 years in that property. The only question I have with that is when we identify business districts, does it mean it has to be a parcel, a condo, or however we define it?
Yes, that is the exact quote that I got back from the State Tax Commission, as defined by the governing body.
Okay, so we wouldn't set a precedent now by going with such a large parcel. My concern is that this potentially could be something that we'd want to use in downtown or even on the west side, depending on in the future, although it does have a significant impact on the revenue coming into the city. At this point, knowing that we can do that in the future, that helpful, I still believe that if we could have, and we'd had more time, we should have just identified this one building instead of putting all of it into it, because I think the development for the large area is what we want to incentivize, not necessarily all the little buildings, because those potentially will turn over quickly as a result of our significant investment into this one building. So we could still, if we wanted to, just identify that parcel or that condo and identify it instead of the full 16 acres.
Additional comments, questions, Ms. Dillon?
I just wanted to, again, stress that I'm very concerned that we're making these decisions very quickly, and I feel like we're being pressured to make these decisions. And with this project specifically, I'm really concerned that we should have expanded that district, if we were going to have it so big, to include that abandoned car wash. And that could have possibly breathed some sort of life into that building that was there. And I just feel like we're getting constantly pressured, and we're making very quick decisions without really thinking them through.
Any Additional comments, Mr. Gearbox?
If by what you've just defined for us, we could, at some point in the future, put the car wash into its own commercial revitalization
Absolutely.
district.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can have this, there is no limit to how many of these districts that we have, similar to the IFT districts. So this process is very similar to the IFT. It's just afforded to those commercial, and what is crucial about this is the keyword rehabilitation. Commercial businesses could go on a vacant lot and put up a new building, probably much cheaper than what it would take to put into revitalizing an existing structure. And in this area of our downtown, of our town, and yes, you're right, you know, it could be done in other places. It is a incentive to bring developers into existing, I don't want to say dilapidated, but struggling and rebuilding where we already have these things. So yes, we can expand and we can develop if it's in the downtown area, it can be of any portion size. If it's in a business district as defined by this governing body, we can create one. And it's an incentive very similar to IFTs.
I was just going to say, there's some other aspects to this whole development project which makes it more beneficial, and I don't know if I want to talk it here or not, but my concern right now is just trying to identify what do we want to use as a basis for creating a real district, I guess. Do we want to do a full 16 acres or just this condo parcel? And for my feeling, that is our investment. We're investing in getting that big building to be something useful, and the rest of the property will develop as a result of that investment, so that we will continue to develop off that. So that's why I keep looking forward to just trying to do the condo building. The other part of this also is that the investment that they're putting into personal property, which is not exempt to the new tax laws, will generate a full tax percentage on it. So they're not asking exemption for that, which in the past our IFTs would have allowed that. So there is a trade-off on this, and I think there's some other reasoning that if our developer could explain in terms of their financing needs and requirements would help understand. So on this portion, I'm just talking about the size of the district, and I have no problem creating the district, so.
And we will address those issues when we get to the actual abatement itself.
Let me say this. First, to Councilwoman Dillon's comments. I stated as part of the public record at our Special Projects Commission meeting last week, I believe that at some point we do need to have a discussion, and we ought to include the derelict, dilapidated, whatever euphemism you choose to associate with it, the car wash that is located behind Tractor Supply, because I think this is another tool that we can leverage to help get that site remediated and developed. To Mr. Gearbaugh's point and observation, I am in favor of establishing the commercial rehabilitation district to include the entire acreage of that development. And I would note, and this gets back to something that our city treasurer said just moments ago, just because you establish it doesn't mean you give them the benefit. That would have to be, somebody would have to go through the application process, make their argument, you know, the burden of proof would be on them as to why they need it, and then it would need to be voted upon by this entire council. So I'm very comfortable with this action. Again, as I've stated in the past, I think this is a good tool that the city and partnering businesses can leverage to improve commerce within the municipality. So, is there anything else? Mr. Hart?
Yes, well, I just would like to follow up a little bit on Ms. Dillon's comment. I share her unease with this, with the speed at which we've had to go through this process. I mean, I do understand that the developer has time limitations. This is also the first time we have used this tool, so I think I would be more comfortable using it if there had been more time to understand it and to digest the implications and maybe think about other applications. I think on first impression, we got very good information at the last meeting from Treasurer Bennett about this tool, and it looks very good. I'm not opposed to using it in this case, but I do look forward very much to, Mr. Campbell mentioned looking at developing the process using something similar to the approach we currently use for IFTs, a more structured and thoughtful process that allows for more measured consideration, and I would hope for that in the future.
The research has already started.
Thank you.
Additional comments? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by CO to approve and adopt and authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to public hearing 16-191. This is Imagine Theater Commercial Rehabilitation Exemption. The first motion, will be to open the public hearing at 8:59, affording any member of the public an opportunity to speak to this issue specifically. Thank you, Mr. Seo. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McClellan. All those in favor of opening the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak?
Close.
Move to close, and we're going to close it at 8:59 because that's the way I read that clock. By Councilmember CO, and who was the second on that? Was it Dylan?
Dylan, yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The public hearing is now closed. Before we entertain the motion, Ms. Bennett, do you want to comment on this a little bit? And then, of course, we have to fill in some blanks in the motion that has been enumerated on the agenda.
Okay.
Let me actually note, too, we have the petitioner and applicant here, the CEO of Imagine Theater and one of his associates, as well as the property owner. Gentlemen, we welcome you here this evening, and there may be an opportunity for you to share some public remarks as well.
So I would just like to kind of go over the process, and then I would invite our guest up to give you some feedback, the comments that have been made not only by this council this evening, but also by the special projects. Imagine Theaters has worked with Ark and Jonah, the owner of the shopping plaza, to look at every resource available to rehabilitate the former Country Market, Farmer Jack portion of the shopping center. They are looking to put in a luxury theater, and I think anybody that's been to an Imagine Theater would agree that this is going to be a great asset to the Saline community that will bring not only their business and jobs for their employees, but I think it'll stimulate, and I think it's proven, we've had a couple phone calls already inquiring about occupancy of others in that shopping center once the theater is approved and moving forward. So they have requested for just the rehabilitation portion that they are putting into improvements. And this will, as Councilmember Gearboss suggested, this is for the real improvements only. There's a great deal of work, heating and cooling elements and stuff like that. The physical things that have to be done to that building, which is going to be about $6.5 million, so that's your first blink, $6.5 million. I feel like I'm giving you a cheat test here. $6.5 million of real improvements that they're going to be putting into that building to make I think it's going to be 9 individual theaters. There's going to be another $2.5 million of personal property, and that'll be cashiers, cashier station, point of sales, and things like that. And we will capitalize by that personal property going on the roll, and that will be collected and not part of the personal property because it is not manufacturing. It's commercial, and it's a large sum, so they will not qualify for the small taxpayers' loss and not for the industrial. So we will be gaining some personal property in the part of during this exemption. We will also, the schools will be made whole because they will be paying the 18 operating, that's by the law, and they will be paying the state ed at its full for the length of the time. The law allows them to request for up to 10 years. As you stated, this has been a learning curve. And this is just becoming lately, it's just starting to generate momentum at the state level as well. So many of the municipalities that I've researched, and even at the state, to have criteria to determine the length of time has not been established by a lot of people. However, I am researching it, and some communities use some guidelines, and one of them is the economic impact that it's going to bring to the community. But in the lack of having that, when we took this as special projects, we used the IFT score sheet. And when we use the IFT score sheet, which allows for the number of jobs, bringing a new business into town. The amount, it's a 54,000 square foot facility, the amount of the square foot. When we took that and scored it out, it would have scored out for the full 10 years. The Special Projects Committee, because you're using this criteria for an IFT, discussed and acted on, the comment was made that IFTs is a 50% tax abatement. This, in essence, is freezing those improvements for up to the full 10 years. So they decided that instead of giving them the full abatement, possibly half that abatement. And then the law states that if the council, if the governing body approves less than 10 years, that we need to explain our reasoning as to why, and the applicant can come back, so they can come back in year 5 and review and request for the remaining 4. They can never exceed more than 10 years, but we can extend it at that time to the full 10 years. So the motion for the mayor is that there would be a 6.5, and that's just an estimate. They could very well put more in there, you know, improvements. That's just an estimate, and that really doesn't impact the abatement at all, because what's happening is each year the assessor will go out and determine what improvements were made so that we can still accurately collect for the schools. And then it would be a period. The special projects recommended 6 years, but it can go up to 10 years, and that's up for the governing body's decision. So with that said, I would like to welcome Paul Glantz, Mike Southern, and Ark and Jonah. They are from the property management company and Imagine Theaters and the property owners to make any comments, and welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. We would welcome any comments you have, and then I'll open it up for questions.
Well, first of all, I can't begin to thank the community and Ms. Bennett, Mr. Mayor, Campbell, for your gracious entertainment of our request tonight. We have not in any way, shape, or form lost our enthusiasm for coming to Saline. In fact, I'm probably more enthusiastic today than I've ever been. However, I face a real practical issue, and that is that we've not yet been able to complete the financing for this project. And it will go to a loan committee with our lender, a lender with whom we've had a very successful track record, I think, that will allow us to, in fact, eventually put the financing together. But our loan officer has also made it very clear that she needs the cushion to know that we have the means to not only meet the debt service for 4, 6, but for 10 years. And so this is a precipice moment for us. Mr. Jonah has very graciously allowed the demolition to go on and has expended his own sums of capital to allow for some of the improvements that have been made thus far. But as a very practical matter, our ability to absolutely move forward is predicated upon closing our financing. And I think that your vote tonight in favor of this particular request would ensure that we absolutely can move forward with this wonderful project that I think will not only benefit the community in the form of paying personal property taxes, but it will ensure the continued payment of the existing real property taxes. We certainly will be creating jobs in the community, and ultimately we hope that we're enhancing the quality of life in this community by bringing this form of entertainment. So I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Jonah, if you don't mind.
Please.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Ark and Jonah. We actually own the property. This all started with a phone call a while back from your business ambassador who brought a breath of fresh air to the property. Got me started thinking about how and what else to do with this property. And I just need to say thank you, because it truly was. We own and manage real estate throughout the state. We own a few of these where we had closed down Farmer Jack's, and this is probably one of the best solutions for this. the reason for the speed that we needed to do this real quick, because Star Wars?
We're not gonna make Star Wars.
The whole idea was to try to make Star Wars.
We're gonna make Valentine's Day.
So, the reason for the speed of doing this was to try to get Star Wars in, and I've spent the dollars on demoing this, and it was basically for courtesy I was repaying the favor that your business ambassador did us. Truly a breath of fresh air. The property is approximately 97,000 square feet. There's currently about 73% that is vacant, and approximately 11,000 square foot we're just letting tenants stay because we don't want another vacant space. This will absolutely enhance the real estate, and it will definitely bring more tenants to this property. It's a complete turnaround, it's a complete redo of the occupancy of the real estate. This is a definite partnership. We've taken financing away from the building that's going to be used for the Imagine Theater so that we could use it in any way that we wanted to. We've made a sizable investment in this property, in the acquisition, and now in going forward with the Imagine. I believe and I trust that this is going to turn this property around. Appreciate and say thank you in advance.
Very good. Gentlemen, we appreciate the comments. Are there questions for our guests or for our city treasurer, business ambassador? Ms. Dillon.
Okay. Are we going to have any benchmarks or anything in the first 6 years that they've got to meet? Is that just going to be based on Catherine inspections?
That. I think we got turned off. We did get turned off. I thought you guys were awfully quiet. There will be annual inspections on the property from Catherine to determine what the values are. And yes, so that annual reporting, they are required also. By they, I mean Imagine is going to be required as part of the certificate to do an annual reporting back to the state by a certain deadline. And that's all, that was part of the application process.
And this goes with the business or with the property?
This will be for Imagine Theaters.
So if Imagine leaves, it goes away?
Yes.
Thank you. And then I just had a quick question on the application. This one? It says at the top, this application should be filed after the commercial rehabilitation district is established.
Yes, yep, that's why it was after the establishment of the rehabilitation district that we just acted on.
Yeah, but this is dated October 19th. Has it not been filed?
It has not been filed. It has been submitted to this board, and then it'll be filed with the State Tax Commission after approval from this board.
Okay.
After here, it also has to go to the State Tax Commission for their review.
Okay.
Anything further, Ms. Dillon?
I just, one last question for Imagine, which was, what is the time frame for your financing?
It's due to go to loan committee on November 3rd.
Thank you.
I do want to yield the floor to the clerk because there's a few minor corrections that need to be made to the resolution. Do you want to note those for the record?
On the front page, under Unit 1, Saline Commons condominium, it says the Special Projects Commission held a meeting on October 17, 2014. That should be 2016.
Change shall be made without objection.
And then on number 2, on the second page, is the same thing. It shows CH Saline LLC's application for commercial rehabilitation exemption. And at the end, it should say on or before November 1st, 2016.
That change will also be made without objection. Thank you, Clerk Royal. Additional questions for city staff or for the applicant?
For city staff, but not for the applicant. These will be for the staff member. I didn't know if we wanted to have them standing here further. This is more questions for the city manager.
Oh, okay. Let me ask one more time. Are there any more questions for our city treasurer or for the applicant or property owner? No? Gentlemen, Ms. Bennett, thank you very
Mayor
much.
Morrow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who had a question?
I'm sorry.
Mr. CO.
I thought I heard Ms. Bennett say for a period of 6 years, recommended by the Special Projects Commission,
Special projects recommended it for 6 years.
and yet did I hear you say,
They're requesting 10.
I see.
And I'll discuss the special projects.
Well, what I can say to that very quickly was, if it is the consensus of this group to approve for a period of 6 years, and they want to reflect the will of the Special Projects Commission, I would probably add verbiage to say, but there's the opportunity for an additional 4 years. Does that make sense, Mr. Seal?
Makes sense to
Okay.
me. Does that still fulfill your requirements?
With all due respect, our challenge really has to do with our financing, and I was hoping that I'd be able to call our loan officer tomorrow and say, by the way, you know, you're proposed to make a 10-year loan for us, and we have this provision that's going to allow us to offer you that type of debt service coverage for 10 years.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant or for the city treasurer? No? Mr. Rhodes?
So your loan application is for a 10-year time period?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions?
Is that the documentation you're submitting to the state?
To the extent it's required, of course we will.
So whatever letters you're saying is saying it's a 10-year loan? Just confirm with Ms. Bennett.
In that letter that you had requested, I'll read it.
Well, it doesn't articulate the terms of our loan, and because, again, that's still being evaluated by the bank itself as well.
That was one of the concerns that was addressed by a member of the Special Projects Committee, was that whatever information is being presented to the state shows that what is being attested to is coming from the applicant, so that we are comfortable with all that information going forward. He was the one nay vote on it and was a legal attorney. So my statement on this one, the reason why we recommended a 5 or 6 year and then allow for the extension was to make sure, being our first time ever doing this, we have an ability to review it. The extension is just a request. They can move forward to have another 4 years, but if we as long want to make sure that the investment does occur as what was proposed, and also that the jobs are there and everything is in place in 5 or 6 years, then the simple aspect of us is moving forward and continuing to allow it for another 4 years. It's kind of a double balance for us, considering the fact that we're basically doing a tax exemption that would be no taxes for 10 years on that increased value, not like we normally do with IFTs where we actually are receiving money. So a 5 year is really a 10-year abatement, or if a 10-year is really a 20-year abatement of taxes. So I'm trying to do some numbers here. So when you look at that type of situation, I understand your financing, but some of the information that we presented at the special projects wasn't here yet. But the other piece of it is, we as a city, I feel, need to make sure that we're attesting to our due diligence to our taxpayers, that we are providing for this exemption, but also in 5 years review it, or in 6 years review it, to make sure that it has met those requirements and continue on at that point if it has.
Care to make any comment on that? You don't have to, but thought I'd afford you the opportunity.
You know, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I rarely take no for an answer, though I also understand that when I stand, so what I'm telling you is that we will be most grateful for whatever consideration you can show us tonight. And so when I talk about being an entrepreneur and not taking no for an answer, I'm going to work with my lender, of course, irrespective of how this vote goes tonight. And it's certainly my fervent wish that they will see fit to provide the financing we've sought. Concurrently, I can tell you that if the goal is to enhance the likelihood that we can go forward and gain favorable dispensation from the loan committee of this Michigan-based institution, then the 10 years would certainly be of great value to us.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any additional questions for these gentlemen or for the city treasurer? One more question, please.
Yeah, just in terms of the due date by which the construction has to be finished, what's that going to be in our document? Have we put those stipulations in there? That the construction must be done, there is the ability to do that per the act that says the construction will be finished by February 29th?
I don't remember.
We discussed that at, yes, we did discuss that at special projects, but that's an item that I can bring up.
Well, they have 6 months after they've started to do it, and you think it's in the application, is that what you said?
Yeah, I think we just need to make sure there's a date in there.
I think it is as well.
I just want to make sure it doesn't get caught
Planned
up.
date of rehabilitation would be completed on March 31st, 2017.
That's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, gentlemen, you may take your seat. Additional comments for city staff? Mr. Gearba, did you have a question for Mr. Campbell?
No, that was it. Ms. Bennett answered it. I wanted to make sure we had that in there.
Mr. Rhodes, did you have a question?
I'd like to comment on the fact that, and I understand the reasoning behind the special projects recommendation, but I would feel really bad if we jeopardize the financing for this project, which means so much to our community and is going to bring all these jobs in to us. And this is not a request for expenditures that are by the applicant that are going to go on over a period of time. All of these expenditures are going to be made before that Imagine Theater opens for the first showing. So we're going to know right away that it's been done. And I would favor the 10-year exemption for this.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, as you know, the Special Projects Commission recommendation is just a recommendation. Council's free to modify that in any way or reject it. So if it's your desire to move the motion that the exemption certificate in the amount of $6.5 million be awarded for a 10-year period, you are certainly able to do so, and the chair would entertain that motion.
I would move to approve and adopt the resolution in the amount of $6,500,000 for a period of 10 years and to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute those documents.
Okay, is everyone clear with that motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, I'll let Mr. Seo take the second on that one. Ms. Tahar, I'll get you on the next one. I saw his hand go up first. So there's a motion on the floor moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilmember Seo to approve and adopt the resolution application for Imagine Theater for commercial rehabilitation exemption certificate in the amount of $6.5 million for a period of 10 years, subject to the terms and provisions of the agreement to be entered into by the applicant with the City of Saline and to authorize or not authorize the mayor clerk to execute said commercial rehabilitation exemption as presented. Discussion. Ms. Tahar.
So I didn't entirely follow Mr. Gearbach's explanation a few moments ago. So I just want to ask if the hesitation about going to 10 years, is at all alleviated by the fact that the exemption goes with the business and not with the property?
I'm not sure are you sure that's the case? After you put that much money into the building, that it would only go with the business and not with the property owner or property?
Well, in the agreement that is attached, I believe, if we read through, and I am sorry, I do apologize for not being a little bit more prepared for all of these.
It'd be highly doubtful that we would discount that.
When we have a tax abatement on the building for an IFT, if that business, and we've had this in the past where those businesses have left, we have revoked, and we have those same powers to revoke that certificate. We have done it for Digipod, as you may recall, and then before that, Hexabits. The building was still there, and they were all on real improvements. The real improvements were still in the building, but the business left, and we revoked that certificate. We still maintain that right on this to revoke it.
And with this shopping center, as we've seen in the past, they've gone to tax tribunal and significantly reduced the value of the building as a result of that. So that's what happens when these buildings or something leaves. That's the concern that I have on that type of thing, because that did happen with the shopping center previously.
Exactly, and so by getting this stimulated back, we can get that tax roll back, or that building for all these vacancies back on the tax roll at full value for the remaining properties.
If they don't ask for a
That's
exemption.
They can ask for the exemption, and this body has the right to approve or not approve.
That's why I was trying to reduce this down to 100. The other reason for this 5 years was just that it's a review. It would extend, it's an automatic extension if they request it. It would be if they don't meet the additional, you have to have requirements on it. So the state expects us to have certain requirements in it, and if we don't provide those requirements to the developer, then it would be for the full 10 years, no matter what.
Additional question, please?
Yes, so the extension is automatic?
If
it's
they meet
requested.
the requirements that we place on it, which would be just basically the number of jobs that they promised and the investment.
Additional comments on this motion? Ms. McClellan and then Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes.
So the extension is just kind of a checks and balances for the
Correct.
city? Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes?
I'm not sure the technical details there, but it's hard for me to believe that an extension would be automatic, that it would not have to go through whoever is sitting on city council at that point in time. So I don't think it can be considered as an automatic. But besides that, I think the secondary benefits of having this theater in place and the improvements to not only that shopping center, but also other businesses and activities that are going to happen around there is more than going to offset any reduction in taxes that we authorize under this particular motion. So I'm certainly in favor of it.
Okay. Quickly, please.
I just wanted just a note, reference, so the exemption, right, is to Mr. Gearbach's point, the exemption is for the improvements. However, the land is still taxed at full, and then, of course, then the personal property, because this would be more than, this is going to be well over the $80,000 threshold for the small business personal property tax exemption. So the city will also be gaining personal property tax from this development as well.
Let me say this, and then we'll open it up for additional comments, although I do want to move quickly to consider this motion. Ms. Bennett, I appreciate your work on this. Gentlemen, again, appreciate your time this evening and your cooperation in working with us as we've moved expeditiously to process this. I'm referencing the handout that the property owner distributed just moments ago, highlighting the vacancy rate at Saline Commons. You actually made a minor mistake, sir. You said 73% vacancy, and on this form it says 75%. Not a big deal, but the vacancies at this particular shopping center have existed for some time. This shopping center has languished for some time, and I have to tell you that I get approached and have been approached throughout the years by my constituents, by residents of the community, asking me what I'm doing about this. And I said at my most recent coffee hour that the citizens of Saline should expect, and actually more than expect, they should demand that their mayor, whoever sits in this chair, is a fierce advocate for economic development, for business investment and entrepreneurship in the community. That's the best thing we can do for residential taxpayers, is expand and diversify the tax base with service industries, with retail, with industrial facilities. So I am very enthusiastic about this motion. I think that, and I'm half joking here, I might be the most enthusiastic mayor in the state of Michigan in regards to Imagine Theater. I think it is a great Michigan business. It's a great Michigan success story. Quite frankly, it's the only movie theater that I choose to patronize because I think it's the best. The only thing that I found misleading about Ms. Bennett's comments is she's indeed correct on the surface. It is a luxury brand. But as I've discussed with the CEO, you get luxury amenities at a very, very reasonable and competitive price. I think luxury sort of reeks of exclusivity, and I don't think this business is exclusive at all. I think it's accessible to all of our families and all of our residents. I do believe it's going to be the genesis to fill the remaining vacancies in that shopping center. And I have a pretty simple criteria when it comes to economic development, whether I'm going to go out on a limb and support businesses. Will it diversify and expand our tax base? Will it offer jobs that my residents, my constituents can compete for? And will it, at a minimum, maintain or enhance the quality of life for the Saline community? And I believe that this does all of this. I do have to say, finally, in conclusion, and with all due respect to my colleagues, I didn't think this process was bad at all. I think sometimes those of us in government sort of get blamed for oftentimes bureaucratic foot shuffling, and I think one of the best things that governments can do is act quickly and nimble, especially when businesses make requests. And so I know this has moved expeditiously, but it moved expeditiously because we were working against an arbitrary deadline that's been set by the state. So again, I appreciate everyone's work on this. I also want to acknowledge our Commissioner, Alicia Ping, who helped us put this first on a Ways and Means Committee meeting for the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, and then 2 weeks later, it was considered by the full board at a regular meeting, and as Ms. Bennett said, it passed unanimously. So I appreciate their support. Again, I think this is a game-changing paradigm shift for the west end of town, for that business center specifically, and I think this is ultimately going to be good for the community. And I guess I'll end by saying this. Every business that we look to in this community and say, wow, you know, we are really blessed, we are really fortunate to have them in this community. All of those developments, all of those investments came about because someone here at the City of Saline, someone at the county, someone at the state was willing to support them, incentivize them, give them some sort of benefit to invest in the community. And that's just the way it is. And I think we need to be aware of that, need to be cognizant of that. So again, I appreciate everyone's work on this. I didn't mean to be long-winded and bombastic, but I'm very enthusiastic about this and urge a yes vote on the motion moved by Rhodes, seconded by Seal. Mr. Seal, did you have a comment, sir?
I did. I think that there's a certain synergy comes about with a certain blend of businesses that come to a community, and I've heard a lot of excitement, and I can see the possibility for a lot of synergy between a theater, between restaurants, between a hotel, and other things that either exist or will exist very hopefully in the very near future in that vicinity. So for that reason, I favor this. I want to do all I possibly can to support it, and that's why I seconded the motion for the 10-year term for the agreement.
Very good. Additional discussion? Ms. Dillon.
I just want to make one last comment that I attended the special projects meeting, and there were others from the dais here, and this issue was discussed at length, and it was decided amongst that group that 6 years was the recommendation. And so I think that we are just dismissing that very quickly in favor of the 10 years.
Additional comments? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by CO to approve, adopt, and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you all. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We are going to move on now to new business item 16-192. This is audit report from Plant Moran for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the audit from Plant Moran for fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2016.
Move to acknowledge.
Thank you, Mr. CO, seconded by Rhodes.
Yes.
All right. Of course, we can discuss this further, but of course, we had a presentation and addressed many questions and concerns. Is there any additional discussion on the audit? Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
Just real quick, I mean, we know this, and as our work session described, even in terms of benefits and so forth, we have a lot of work ahead of us to decide how we're going to handle our post benefits for retirees and how we're going to continue to fund our outstanding liabilities related to pension. So I think that's our priority now and in the future in terms of however we handle our incentives going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tahar.
And I may sound like a broken record, I concur. My main takeaway from the memo was the need for us to plan far into the future for long-term liabilities and obligations. But I also want to add congratulations to staff for, there was a lot of good information in there about what a great job staff has been doing from the auditor's point of view, and I want to congratulate them on that.
Very good. Additional comments? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been moved by Seal, seconded by Rhodes to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Next is new business item 16-193. This is 207 Monroe Street Listing Extension Agreement. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the October 7th, 2016 memo from City Manager Campbell and to approve or not to approve the request to renew the Charles Reinhardt Company listing agreement for 207 Monroe Street through March 31st, 2017.
I'll move to acknowledge the receipt.
Thank you, Mr. Gearboss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall Darby Colano from Reinhardt, who's here, and Rick Magnum have been the team that have been representing 207 Monroe and had some extensions, multiple extensions as the cities continue to work with High Meadows LLC, Mr. Farrell, the developer, and so wanted to staff is proposing to continue on the relationship between the city and Reinhardt, specific to Ms. Colano and Mr. Magnum, as they're the team representing that. Reason for the extension, of course, is, as you may recall, there's been a recent City Council extended the closing date with Mr. Farrell, and so want to make sure that that they continue. They've been representing all along, so it's staff's recommendation to extend the representation.
So does the mover of the motion have?
Just a question. What's Mr. Farrell's extension date to? Didn't we just give until the end of the year?
75 days. 75 days from October.
Okay. The reason why I just wanted to extend it only the 3 months through December 31st. I'm trying to get rid of this property, but at some point, I'd like to reconsider all of our leasing agreements, because I think even the ones that we extended in the industrial park, the amount that we're using for those properties is too high in terms of the commission, because we changed the purpose of that property, and we should have changed the commissions at that time, too. So I'm fine with this going forward. I just wanted to make sure if we could have just done it through December, but I wanted to raise the issue about all of our listing agreements, and we need to reconsider how those are handled.
Did the seconder of that motion have any comments?
No.
Any other comments from anyone? Then we will vote on the motion as it's currently presented, which is to only acknowledge receipt of the October 7th, 2016 memo from City Manager Campbell. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And Mayor Marl, we're back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there now a motion to approve or not to approve the request to renew the Charles Reinhardt Company listing agreement for 207 Monroe Street through March 31st, 2017?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Move to approve by Tahar, seconded by Gearbaugh. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-194. This is DPW tractor/mower purchase. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the October 20th, 2016 memo from DPW Director Fordyce and to approve or not to approve the request to purchase a Massey Ferguson 4609M tractor and Woods MDS 8.3 rotary cutter from Dively Equipment Incorporated of Ann Arbor in the amount of $55,750.
Move to acknowledge receipt.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep. Yeah, do you want to address that? Do you want to maybe just start with a motion to acknowledge receipt?
Sure.
Let's just do that, a motion to acknowledge receipt. Who's going to move that,
I'll
Tahar?
move it.
I just did that.
Okay, Tahar will be the mover, Dylan will be the second. Sorry about that. Mr. Campbell, or Mr. Boy, I'm out of it now.
It's a long-
Past my bedtime, and
It's,
I'm early to bed, that's not a lie. Mr. Fordyce.
Sure, thank you. So in the FY17 budget, we included $60,000 to replace a 1974 tractor. We put together a set of specifications, issued an RFP, publicly advertised it, and opened 3 bids on October 17th. Dively Equipment was the low bid with a Massey Ferguson 4609M tractor. And I prepared this memo and sent it to Terry, and it got in the agenda. And then after doing that, I took a look at the bids again and realized that we had, within the budget amount, had an opportunity to get a slightly better tractor. So asked the bidder to give me a quote on the next model up, the 4610, which is identical, except that it has more horsepower. They submitted that quote, which I'm not sure if you guys got a
I got
copy of
it.
that.
I've got the
Okay.
verbiage right here.
Okay.
Yep.
So for an additional $3,150, we'll be at $58,900 and have a somewhat more powerful tractor, still within budget.
Very good. Are there questions for our DPW director? Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
So there's no concern with the change in the bid? Was it generic enough so that what we requested is okay to have a different model?
Yeah, and an alternative is,
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions for staff?
It still includes the brush hog?
Yes. Yeah, same model, brush hog.
Mr. Rhodes, I'm sorry.
And both of those possibilities included the bucket?
Yes.
Same size bucket?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Councilwoman Tahar, seconded by Councilwoman Dillon to acknowledge receipt of the October 20th memo. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. And how about this is the revised motion that is, was provided to you in the form of an email dated October the 24th. This will be a motion then to authorize the purchase of a Massey Ferguson 4610 M tractor and Woods MDS 8.3 rotary cutter from Dibley Equipment Incorporated of Ann Arbor, Michigan in the amount of $58,900.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Tahar. Any Dillon. Sorry. Thanks. Questions or comments? Mr. Seal, please.
Yes, two. Number one, does the additional 10 horsepower add to the life of the tractor or just add to the expense of burning gas?
What we expected to add is working faster. So when we're running the brush hog, that takes a certain amount of power. When we have more power available, we can move through the fields a little bit faster.
Okay.
And it also adds the ability to add further attachments. There's certain attachments that require the higher horsepower in order to operate. So it gives us some more options in the future. And we kept our last tractor for 42 years, so we should have this one for...
If only you could do that with this new one, we'll be great.
Yeah.
Is this gas or diesel?
This is diesel.
Does it, does upping or changing the specification of the tractor? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I think it was asked and answered previously. I didn't hear the answer down here. Does changing the spec on the tractor itself cause it to have to be rebuilt?
no, alternatives are acceptable.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Ms. Dillon, please.
What are you doing with the old one? Is it still working? Are you going to keep it in the rotation, or is she just going to go out to pasture?
Yeah, we really don't have a use for that one any longer. It's, you know, it can't operate this larger brush hog, and so that one will be auctioned.
Anything further for our DPW director? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Councilman Gearbaugh, seconded by Councilwoman Dillon to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to new business item 16-195, this is Police Department review. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the October 18th, 2016 memo from Mayor Marl and to authorize or not authorize the hiring of Mr. John Hess to conduct a review of the Saline Police Department at a not-to-exceed amount of $2,500.
Move to acknowledge receipt and to authorize.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Seal. Well, obviously, my memo hopefully was direct and to the point. I also provided for your benefit a copy of the memo that I sent to council back in 2015 when we first authorized Mr. Hess to come in and do his independent review. And then I also enclosed a copy of Mr. Hess's analysis that he presented late last fall, early last winter. I do want to acknowledge, and it was in the memo, both Councilwoman Tahar and I did go out to the Grand Rapids area and visited with Mr. Hess over lunch to talk about the department and doing a more abbreviated review. As my memo reflects, we had a very nice discussion. He was willing and eager to come back, and actually, I think he's sort of looking forward to it. And I guess at this point, Ms. Tahar, since you've helped me with this process, actually, you started helping me with this process more than a year ago when we first vetted and interviewed and checked references for Mr. Hess. Do you want to make a comment at this time? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I would welcome your thoughts.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm also recommend bringing Mr. Hess back, and the discussion we had with him was very good and productive and constructive, and he had some specific ideas about structuring the comeback review that I thought were very useful and helpful. And so I think this will be good for everyone.
Very good. Questions or comments? Mr. Gearbox.
Just comment, I would like to have him also meet with our labor attorney in terms of negotiations and stuff that have been going on.
Okay. I think we can make that addition, and I'm confident he wouldn't have any objection to that.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to acknowledge receipt and to authorize. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is commission, committee, and task force reports from council members. Mr. Rhodes.
The Environmental Commission has selected the winners of the Saline B Green Awards from those that were nominated. And this is a bit different than the Green Thumb Awards in that this one has to do to recognize those individuals and organizations who have gone out of their way to be more environmentally friendly and take better care of the planet than some of us might. And those awards, I believe, are scheduled to be presented at our council meeting on November the 14th.
Very good. Excellent. Additional committee, commission, or task force reports from council members. Ms. McClellan?
This may go under announcements, but I'll do it at the
Do it now.
report. But the Saline Youth Council and the Parks and Rec Commission are hosting a teen forum on November 15th. So our youth council is just doing a fabulous job. There's 19 of them, and they're so enthusiastic and full of ideas, but then they're probably going to have the whole school here on the 15th. But they're asking all teens to come and give their opinions about the parks and the rec center and the city in general, I think. But that is November 15th from 7 to 9 p.m. So if you're not going to get the announcement at school and someone's listening, join us.
Very good. Thank you. It's on my calendar. Additional committee, commission, or task force reports. Ms. Dillon, please.
I just wanted to, on behalf of the 150th Task Force, say thank you to the city and to the task force and to all the volunteers for making the fireworks so successful. And to also mention, I know the mayor said it earlier, that the Saline book is still on sale here at City Hall or at Ace Hardware. So, but they're going quickly, so get one while they're in their first print.
Let me just say that, was everyone at the fireworks a couple weeks ago? Yeah. I can't tell you how many compliments I received, and Ms. Dillon is correct that there were a lot of volunteers who helped to make that happen. However, she's being a bit modest because she put in a lot of time and a lot of effort to make that event a success. So I want to thank and acknowledge you, Ms. Dillon, because I don't think without your efforts it wouldn't have been as successful as it was. So thank you very much. I just can't begin to tell you that the city does a lot of great things. And even when we do some really marvelous, fabulous things, it's surprising that there's always some people who think we could have done better or have some criticism. But it was almost universal how much people enjoyed those fireworks and how much they thought it was a great way to celebrate this very significant milestone. And the weather was perfect, and everyone, I thought all of our guests behaved appropriately. There were absolutely no problems that I was made aware of. Cleanup was quick, and I think it was just a marvelous event. So thank you, Ms. Dillon, and thanks to everyone who was involved in that.
Thank you.
Are there any other commission, committee, or task force reports? Mr. Seal.
The mayor and I had a chance to go down to SEMCOG to their gathering last week, I believe it was, the week before. And they had some breakout sessions. I went to one on encouraging small business friendly as that is for our community. And the county of Monroe was there. They presented a booklet that they have in their community for streamlining business development. And I pass that on to you, Mr. Campbell. Maybe you can see that Mr. Herbal gets a look at that. Had some pretty good ideas for what they're doing in Monroe County to encourage businesses and to provide a guide for them to work their way through the development procedures in various townships and so on within their jurisdiction.
Very good. It was a very, very good conference. The lunch was keynoted by Tim Skubik and was very interesting.
It was.
And entertaining. Other reports or announcements? No, then let's, Mr. Rhodes, I'm sorry.
Under other announcements, I attended the River Raisin Watershed Council annual meeting last week, Thursday evening in Adrian, as the appointed delegate here from the city, and we adopted the budget for next year. And I'm pleased to announce that there is no increase in the fee structure, so it'll be the same, I think it was $850 or something like that for the city of Saline for next year. And they also talked about the many efforts that are underway to reduce the contaminants that are going into the River Raisin, which eventually, of course, go into Lake Erie. And we all probably remember the algae blooms that they had there a couple years ago. They also talked about, and we did a Skype thing, which was kind of fun, with several young people from the AmeriCorps group. I think they were in age from 19 to 24, something like that. And they had spent 2 weeks in the city of Adrian clearing the Raisin River within the city limits. And they removed, during that period of time, in total 72 tons of stuff from the river. It shouldn't have been there. A lot of it was logs, of course, but some was debris that had been thrown in. And one of the young ladies was really excited when they were asked what was the most unusual thing that they found. She said they found one of those old phones that used to sit on a desk. She'd probably never seen one of those before. So we all got a chuckle out of that. But it was a good meeting.
Good.
Glad that took place. And then the second one is this afternoon I attended a meeting in Lansing of the Economic Development and Land Use Committee. And in order to save some time here, I have marked up our agenda with the position that the Land Use Committee took on the various bills. And that's the purpose of the committee, to review proposed legislation from the state and to take a position of either support or neutrality or opposition to it. And so if any of you want any more information about my notes on that, come and see me and I'll talk with you about it.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. One other thing under reports and other announcements, I placed at everyone's seat this evening, or rather the clerk did, an invitation to our small business luncheon, which will be held this Friday, October 28th at noon here in council chambers. Of course, all of you are invited and welcome to attend. Please be sure to RSVP. Of course, it says to RSVP by today, but we still have some spots available. I believe Chris Shunk put something up on Facebook, which I would encourage you to share. And if you come in contact with any budding entrepreneur or small business owner between now and maybe even Wednesday, if you want to extend an invitation and encourage them to contact either myself, Ms. Bennett, or Kathy Korfman, we would love to have them come. We'll have a number of presentations. I think the most compelling will be Michigan Ave and the final stages of the reconstruction. But this is always a really nice event and a great way for us to engage with our small business leaders. So please help us spread the word. If there are no other reports or announcements, we move on to a proposed ethics policy. And I want to begin by saying Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes and Councilwoman Tar and I have been bouncing this back and forth for probably about 2 months now. I appreciate their work. Obviously, this is something that I expressed my desire to see adopted in, I think, 2 of my State of the City addresses. And this is what we've come up with thus far. I believe the copy in front of you, this originated from you, did it not, Ms. Tahar?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to explain really quick, I guess I'll start with you and then I'll ask Mr. Rhodes to comment if you'd like, the process, and then maybe go over why you have some areas highlighted in this document?
Yes, certainly. So the document in front of you started out with a discussion of the possibility of making a change to the city code and having an ethics chapter in the city code. And the discussion quickly, among the three of us, came to the conclusion that that was, looking at sample documents from other cities, that that was much more structure and much more punitive and much more prescriptive than we were interested in. So we talked about what we discussed and came to consensus about what elements should be in an ethics policy. That's simply a policy statement of the council, not formally part of the city code. We drew so the first section up to the part that says guidelines for the city council, City of Saline, is new. And the principles that are described there are based on our consensus about what points should be included in a code of ethics for a city council. And the language is drawn from documents from several cities in the state, City of Battle Creek, City of Charlotte, City of Hamtramck. I think that's just those three. So language is borrowed, but the organization and emphasis is ours. And then the guidelines section is a revision of our existing city council guidelines, which is the last page, the last 2 pages. And the elements that are highlighted in yellow are the things that are changed from our existing guidelines.
Very good. So what I would, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, would you like to make any comment at this time, since you also worked diligently to create this document?
No, I think Councilmember Tahar covered things very well.
Okay, very good. Well, here's what I'd like to do. If people have comments, suggestions, Mr. Tahar, can I kind of delegate that you'll take the lead on this between now and our next regular council meeting?
Sure.
Okay. What I would like to do is if everyone's good with this document, that's terrific. If you have some changes or some additions, I would encourage you to direct those to Ms. Tahar. And then what I'd like to do is have this added as an action item at our next regular meeting, which will be on the 14th for consideration and for adoption. Okay? Excellent. Very good. Moving right along then, unless there's anything further on the ethics policy. Strategic planning. Mr. Campbell, do you want to talk about our meeting with Kelly Petrock?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As noted in a previous communique, Mayor Marlin and I met a couple weeks ago with Kelly Petrock to discuss continue on with the City Council's annual strategic planning process. And so I know it was important to Mayor Marl that there was also a public component, open house as far as like we've had the last couple of years, and wanted to do that. So we sat down with Mr. Petrock and kind of fleshed out potential format of 2 meetings. One would be currently tentatively scheduled open house, similar where we had it before, where you had potentially if it were at the cafeteria at Liberty School, where we had the outside classrooms, if you will, where we had a team of department head and a council member to facilitate. And then that would be, right now, the tentative date is January 10th. I believe that's a Tuesday, I believe, approximately 6 o'clock in the evening. And then 6 or 6, I think it's actually 6:30. 6:30 to 8, I think, is what we proposed to promise to get people out of there by. And then have a follow-up, of course, open to the public, but it would be that Saturday, the 14th, from say 8 till noon with City Council and department heads, like we've done in the past, to kind of go through the comments, information from our residents, to polish up and craft a updated strategic plan. If that would be, if that.
And colleagues, the mindset between changing the time of the year in which we engage in this sort of strategic planning is specifically due to the public open house component. It was my observation that in the last couple of years when we did that, because we did it in the month of December, in between the holidays, that we really struggled to get the kind of turnout that I would consider ideal. And so I'm hoping that by changing the date and giving us a little bit more time to promote the event, that maybe we can help drive turnout a little bit more. Any questions about any of that? No. Mr. Gearbuck?
And it would be helpful if we had some of that information that will be presented to us ahead of time from the staff. Just because I think when we have that all presented at one meeting, it's way too much for us all to comprehend, and it's kind of it's like a give and a take. So if there's some information and such that we can have prior to that in terms of what the needs and things are of our staff, in terms of their strategic wants,
Sure.
that would be helpful.
Okay.
Great. Anything else on that? No? Okay. Then finally, a proposed work meeting on November the 2nd. After speaking with staff,
Actually, it's the 3rd. I had
the
a
3rd?
typo.
Oh, okay. Is that a Wednesday or Thursday?
I think it's a Thursday.
Thursday,
Yep.
okay. That's right, because the 31st is a Monday. We would like to propose, if everyone here is amenable to this, a work meeting on the 3rd, I would propose at 7 p.m., to discuss the RFP regarding an analysis on odor abatement at the wastewater treatment plant. Needless to say, we all have received complaints and inquiries over the last several months regarding smells and odors that we believe are permeating from our treatment plant. We did have what I consider to be a pretty successful open house this past Saturday, had a number of people go through, and I think they found it enlightening and informative. But I think this issue has lingered for quite some time. I think there's a strong commitment to resolve it, and I would like to move on this issue sooner as opposed to later. So I don't think, and I would ask staff this question, I think probably an hour is sufficient, maybe an hour and a half at most. Would you say that's?
Sure, I would hope, again, it's going to be partly, obviously, how many questions and comments, that type of thing.
Right, but I'd like to see if this group could make the 3rd work, or really to identify what's your preference.
The 3rd works for me.
Works for you at 7, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Fine.
Ms. McClellan? Okay, Ms. Tahar?
I won't be in town.
You won't be in town, Ms. Dillon?
Yes, it's fine.
Fine with you? Okay. Ms. Tahar, maybe staff can get with you before and just chat with you and develop. You can develop any questions, comments that you may have, if that's all right?
Potentially,
Okay,
yes.
very good. All right, I think that concludes the discussion portion of the agenda. Is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up? Mr. Gearbaugh?
I would just like to apologize to the public that we have not been going out live on our telecasts. I think it's been 3 sessions now, and I know our city manager is working on it. And I believe communication is one of our top items that we need to concentrate on. And again, I know we're trying to do it afterwards, but I think our live telecasts are something that's important and something that we should stay committed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments? Then we'll proceed to the second public comment period on our agenda this evening. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? Is there any other business to come before Saline City Council this evening? Well, then please note our next meeting will be a work meeting to discuss odor abatement at the wastewater treatment plant on November the 3rd. Then we have a regular meeting on the 14th with a work meeting to discuss community event applications at 6. We will conclude at 7 and have another veterans reception similar to what we've had in the past. I'll be putting out a press release and probably electronically disseminating invitations, which my council colleagues are free to pass out to area veterans. We'd like to take an opportunity to recognize them. And then we have a regular meeting on November the 21st at 7:30 p.m. There are no absences this evening, so at this time the chair would seek a motion to adjourn at 10:02 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Dillon, seconded by Councilmember Gearbaugh. All those in favor of adjourning this regular council meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. This meeting is adjourned.